Well, I'm joined now by the Scottish Government's Minister for Employability and Training, Jamie Hepburn. Jamie Hepburn, that Fraser-Allender report, which Andrew was referring to there, it said that the weakness in the Scottish economy can't be explained just by the fall in the oil price and the effect on the oil and gas industry, and can't be explained by Brexit because the economy down south is doing rather well at the moment. It says instead it would appear that the economy is stuck in a cycle of low growth, weak investment and fragile confidence. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the first thing to reflect on is that the Fraser-Allender Institute actually do say that between the period 2014-2016, about 2/3 of the sluggish growth in the economy is in fact down to the downturn in oil and gas.
No one is denying that oil and gas is a big factor. What they're saying is it can't explain. I'll read you what they say. Such weakness can no longer be explained solely by the downturn in the oil and gas industry.
Indeed, I'm not suggesting it's solely so, but I think to quantify it, 2/3 of it can be put down.
I accept that, but what else is going on?
Well, clearly there are other underlying trends that we need to get underneath the skin of. But I think the other thing we should reflect on, there are strengths to the Scottish economy. Well, if you look at...
Well, hang on, I asked you why you think there's weakness beyond the fall in the oil and gas industry. What's your answer to that before you start telling us how marvellous everything is?
Well, I wasn't quite going to go and say how marvellous everything is. I'm not denigrating the nature of the challenge we face. Clearly, we've seen in the last quarter contraction in the economy. I'm not seeking to downplay that at all, but I would caution against us constantly talking down the Scottish economy when there are...
I'm not talking anything down. I'm asking you to explain why you, as a representative of the Scottish Government, think the Scottish economy, other than oil and gas, is still so weak relative to the economy in the rest of the UK?
Well, I think that's the point I'm trying to make. I wouldn't talk about it being so weak, but ultimately I would agree that it can't be entirely down to oil and gas, so I would make the point again that 2/3 of it, by the Fraser-Allender Institute's own measurement...
So what is it down to?
Is, well, clearly there are issues about some confidence in terms of people utilising capital, investing it into productively into the Scottish economy.
So why should there be a problem here but not in England?
Well, I would beg to differ in terms of, you look at the UK economic performance overall the last year, it hasn't exactly been a powerhouse either. And ultimately, that's...
Again, according to the Fraser-Allender, between the end of 2015 and the end of 2016, the British economy grew by 1.9% and the Scottish economy didn't grow at all.
Well, over the last year, the Scottish economy did grow. The Fraser-Allender Institute were very clear on that. In the last year, it grew, and in this year coming, they say it'll grow again. Now, in the last quarter, there was a particular challenge. I would accept that. But the point I was going to go on to make is that we need to work with those who hold capital to get them the confidence to invest, and that's something we are constantly doing through our economic strategy, through our labour market strategy. We've got the Scottish Growth scheme.
Let me not ask you a question, actually. Let the Fraser-Allender ask you a question. This is from their report. They say, what our economy needs more than ever is clear policy strategies backed up by concrete action. The Scottish economy has been flatlining for 2 years, contrary to what you've just said. The EU referendum result was known 12 months ago. But what genuinely new policy actions with immediate effects have been taken in response, and what has been their impact? Well,
with respect, I don't think the economy has been flatlining, and I wasn't saying anything other than what the Fraser-Allender Institute has said. The Scottish economy grew last year.
So what's your answer to their question?
Next year. Well, we're taking a range of measures. So we've got the Scottish Growth scheme, the £500 million scheme to support business to export. We've got the small business bonus, which continues to support the small and medium enterprise sector, which, of course, let's remember, and we've expanded that scheme, which will take 100,000 businesses out of having to pay business rates at all. And let's not forget some 85%.
But it's not having any impact.
85% of the Scottish economy.
Remember the last bit of their question. What has been their impact? The impact is the Scottish economy could possibly be going into recession.
Well, here's the thing. We measure economic growth in quarterly cycles. So, and I'm not trying to downplay or denigrate the concerns that exist about the last quarter, where we did see some contraction in the Scottish economy. But any time that happens, then immediately someone could say that we're on the brink of recession. We're going to see the latest GDP figures out this week.
Okay.
And I'm not going to presuppose them, but I think there's a lot to be confident about the Scottish economy right now. If you look at, for example, the Bank of Scotland Oil and Gas monitor, Aberdeen and Chamber of Commerce
I agree
monitors,
with,
they're saying there should be confidence in the oil and gas sector, for example, which has accounted for so much of the issues over the last 2 years.
Let's forget about recession. I accept that, 2 quarters, it's a pretty narrow definition. It's not really the most important thing. The most important thing is that growth in the Scottish economy is substantially below growth in the British economy and has been so now for several years. And you don't seem to have any explanation for that.
Well, to the contrary, I've already made...
Other than oil and gas. We know that the oil and gas...
To the contrary, I've already said we need to imbue a greater sense of confidence in those who have capital to invest it into the economy. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to support
but why is that specific to Scotland? That's true across the UK.
Well, indeed, if you look across the UK, there's regional variation. So we're positing Scotland, but we're positing Scotland against the entirety of the UK.
But the difference
so much of the UK's economic growth is predicated on what happens in London and the South East. If you look at other parts of the UK, we're doing better than they are.
Better than some parts, but actually what's happened is that for many years, Scotland was doing relatively well compared to areas of England like the North and even the Midlands, and that's not happening anymore. Growth here is slower than in most of these areas in England.
And yet in the latest figures we have, if you look at the labour market, we've got a very resilient labour market. Unemployment is at a 25-year low. We've got
which the Fraser-Valdez says is largely because people are dropping out of the labour market.
No, that's not correct. If you look at the last quarter, more people went into employment than went into inactivity. And incidentally, inactivity as an economic measure is all too often misunderstood. That includes, for example, people who are studying in further and higher education. And of course, we funded a record number of higher education places in the last year.
Basically, what you've done is disputed the Fraser-Valdez figures.
No, not
You've
at all.
disputed my interpretation
well,
of
I might
those
be disputing
figures.
your interpretation, Gord, but I'm not disputing the Fraser-Valdez report.
I'm not sure you've come up with any explanation of whether the Scottish Government is even concerned about this situation. I mean, do you have any big idea for what you're going to do? Or are you just going to keep chugging on doing the same thing?
Of course we're concerned, Gordon, and I'm hopefully not giving any other impression than, of course, we would be concerned with a contraction in the Scottish economy. Well, we'll continue to do what we've been seeking to do. We're investing in our people in terms of ensuring that they have all the opportunities to advance in the labour market
so is England.
Education,
so is Wales, so is Northern Ireland.
We're investing in infrastructure in terms of transport infrastructure, and we're investing in digital infrastructure as well. We've got a high ambition to have 100% broadband coverage by 2021. These things will be absolutely necessary to ensure that we have economic growth. Nothing you're doing is
addressing the specific problem that the Scottish economy is flatlining relative to the rest of the UK. I mean, all these things may be absolutely marvellous in the very long term, but they're not addressing the specific problem.
Well, to the contrary, and if you take it back, and this is why I'm not disputing what the Fraser-Valdez Institute says, their measurement says the same thing as the ONS, that we saw growth in the Scottish economy. Clearly would like to see more, and they predict that this coming year the economy will continue to grow.
All right, look, we'll have to leave it there. Jamie Hepburn, thank you very much.